My name's Geoff Stearns. I work also on the syndication team. I guess you're hearing lots of people from syndication today. I primarily work on the video player. So normally when you would see a YouTube video on a website that is not YouTube, it's probably playing back in one of the players that I work on. So we have a few different players. I think you've heard a little bit about them. I'm going to talk about two players in particular. One is the standard embedded player, which is probably the one that you're all familiar with and the one that you've seen, around on the internet. And then the Chromeless player, which there's probably been mentioned a few times today already, which is our sort of super customizable player. So let's get started, I guess. First of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about the embedded player. Now, the Chromeless player. Well, let me back up. So the embedded player generally, I feel, would probably be okay for probably 99% of your needs, in my opinion. The Chromeless player is exciting and all, but the embedded player really brings everything together. So the embedded player, you guys have all seen it. Let me show you a quick example of it, just to show a little demo here. Oops, I already have this open. So this here are a few examples of videos embedded using our embedded player. And you can see there's a couple different layouts and color options you can make. We can even watch a couple of videos here. They're pretty funny. Do we have audio? Yes, no? There it goes. Yeah, I think they just turned it up. So there's not really a lot of point in that. I just want to show it because it's pretty funny. The one thing to sort of get out of this is you can see that with the embedded player, there's a lot of customization options. Okay, you can set the color of the control bar. You can add a border around it if you want to. These down here, we sort of call this the genie menu. Although it used to look more like more of a genie thing. Now it's just sort of a slide forward thumbnail menu. You can enable this or disable this if you want. A lot of people ask, I actually talked to someone recently who said they really wanted to use the embedded player, but they'd hate how it shows these related videos that could be like a competitor, or it could be, random pornography or something like that, and you might not want that, and you can disable it, so I should go through that stuff in a minute. A couple other examples of videos, and just a couple other videos that are kind of fun, so we'll watch those.
就这种突然把车拿下来这种很放，我把机器给关了。
Does anyone here have this much free time? No. Yeah. I'd volunteer our parking garage if anybody wants to do this later. All right, so let's take a quick look at the options that you have available for the normal embedded player. If you go to our YouTube site on the code.google.com site, we have a couple of pages that relate just to the player thing. So we have YouTube player tools here. There's a page called player parameters that talks about the different customizations you can do. And then we have some JavaScript and Flash APIs and the Chromeless player stuff. So this is like your one resource place for anything you want to know about the players. So quickly, I'll step through this stuff. This is a list of all the different parameters you can use on the player, and a lot of people sort of gloss over or maybe don't realize that you can actually customize them, and it's really easy to customize the players. All you do is you go to the YouTube site, I'll just give you a quick example here. You pick the video that you want, grab the embed code here, and when you stick it in your page or whatever you're putting it into here, all you have to do is modify a few variables. So you can notice that there's the URL to the players in two places here. There's this one here, and this has a few parameters. Now this part right here is the actual URL to the player, and if you just use that plain URL, you'll just get the normal standard player that's just the gray that you've probably seen a lot. But all these other variables here are extra things that you can customize, and you can actually come in and change these. So like color 1, color 2 right here, these are just hex values, so you can set them to any hex value you want. Color 2 is the color of the control bar, and then color 1 is the color of the border, or sort of like the secondary color of the player, if you turn the border on. HL is a language. We support, I don't know how many languages, maybe 18 different languages right now, so you can actually tell the player to be whichever language we support. We're always adding new languages. I think by default it's whatever user language you used when you got the embed code. FS is a new one that I haven't documented yet, but I'll tell you guys about that in a second here. So that's how you edit that. Let me go back to my page here. All right, so really quickly, I'm just going to run through these because these are pretty useful for most people. So the rel argument is, like I said earlier, it's to turn on or turn off the related videos in the player. So either when you push the menu button or when the video ends, if you set rel to 0, then you don't see those related videos. Autoplay is just lets the player autoplay when it loads up. You guys can see certain sites like Dig uses that when you load a video on Dig. You can set it to loop, so if you want to have a video just loop forever, you can set loop to 1 and it'll loop forever. All these values, if they're like a Boolean value, it's either 1 or 0. So make sure you don't put like true or false in there. It actually has to be a 1 or a 0. Enable JS API and Player API ID are kind of special ones. I'm going to talk about those in a little bit. Disable KB just disables the keyboard controls. A lot of people don't know that the players have some keyboard controls. They're listed out here, so you can do spacebar to play and pause the player, or you can use your left and right arrow keys to jump ahead or jump back to the beginning, and then up and down arrow keys change your volume up and down. EGM is kind of a weird one. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it basically makes it so that if you set EGM to 1, when you hover over the video player with your mouse, it brings that little menu up over the video, so it lets you kind of, I guess, helps discoverability a little bit. The border 1 or 0 turns on that border that's around the player, and you can set that on or off. And then color 1, color 2 is what I already mentioned for setting the colors. And then there's a few other example usage here, and there's another example of a video player with a blue border. So I think a lot of people, they ask for the Chromeless player, but really this player is really, really flexible and would probably suit most of your needs. And then this way you don't have to build your own control setup, since we already have our, pretty standard controls already set up there. Another thing to notice is that this player also allows you to set the player at any size you want. So it doesn't have to be like a standard 4:3. You can actually set it to like widescreen, like the last video I showed you guys. Or you can shrink it or make it bigger. Pretty much whatever size you want. The player will just fill whatever size you give it, which is nice. There's not a way to set the quality yet. Sorry. Let's see here. All right, so let's go back. So let me go back to my examples here. Oops. All right, one more video and then we'll move on. This one's good. So the FS parameter, actually, it's not documented yet, but I added full screen functionality to the embedded player last week. So you guys can now use your embeds if you just go and get the new code from the website. You can watch stuff in full screen mode. So it looks like the projector's kind of screwing it up a little bit. But really, it would fill the whole screen if it was on a normal display.
Keep the rubber band with me.
This guy's name is Balloon45, and he's a balloon fetishist. This was his second attempt at trying to climb inside of a balloon. This Gunther likes this guy. This guy is basically like the patron saint of the YouTube web developers, for the most part.
Oh, forgot the glasses. We gotta come off. Well, my head's inside. Whoa.
I think there's only one end of it, I guess. I think it's like a big South American weather balloon or something like that. He actually tells you what it is.
My arms. My head's inside. Whoa. Turn it. That's the last thing I need now. Nothing's cooperating. Oh, great. I'm becoming trapped in the balloon. Drag the lock. Oh, I hate this. Oh, darn it. Oh, blasted. I can still breathe. I gotta get out of this balloon. Try it. So I need a spotter.
I think that's my favorite part right there when he does the little shimmy.
It's not wrecked the balloon. Drag the lock. Hate this.
This guy's awesome. This is fantastic. All right. He does a lot of confessionals too. I highly recommend his channel. It's really good. It's Balloon45 is the name if you guys want to look it up. So anyway, so really quickly, the full screen mode that's there now. Any new embeds that you grab from the YouTube site should have the full screen embed. But you do have to do a little bit of special stuff. If you have like an existing website that uses our embed code, you have to add allow full screen parameter and attribute to your embed code. And if you guys want to see what that looks like, you can just grab any embed code from the YouTube site and you'll see it in there. And then there's another player parameter called FS. And you set that to either 1 or 0 to either show or hide the actual full screen button. So we do that because a lot of our old embed code didn't have the allow full screen parameter. So if we showed the button just wouldn't work. So we, in some cases, will actually hide the button on sites that don't support the full screen embed code. So have some fun with that. All right. It's hard to think after watching that video there. Let's go back to the thing. All right, so another thing that I want to talk about is the JavaScript and Flash API. So in the embedded player and in the Chromeless player, they both can support a JavaScript API for controlling the player, and they can also support a Flash API. So if you're working with ActionScript, you can load the player into your ActionScript app and have pretty much full control over the players that way. The APIs are pretty much identical with some exceptions as to how you initialize the player when you load it into a Flash app, which I guess is probably to be expected a little bit. I want to kind of briefly go over the JavaScript API reference, and I'll get more into this a little bit later. So the key thing to know about, I guess, for using the JavaScript API, let me actually show the demo first, and then we'll get back into it. So this is like a really quick demo page I set up. This is actually linked off of the bottom of the JavaScript reference page on the code.google.com site. So this is just a normal embedded player embedded on a page, and I have some HTML controls here that enable JavaScript controls of the player. So I can hit play, and the player will start playing. You have pretty good support over it. I can hit pause. You can mute it or unmute it, which I think my sound went away again, but that's okay. You can seek around within the player, so you can seek to any time you want. You can even seek ahead to say like 150 seconds. So you can seek ahead to points in the video that haven't loaded yet. So if you guys have noticed, YouTube uses sort of like a custom streaming method, I guess you could call it. All of our videos are progressive download, but the way that we serve them is that we can actually start playing them from any point in the video. So you can actually jump ahead in the video and start playing points that haven't actually downloaded yet, and then we'll just start making a new request to the server and start downloading it. And you can see that happening here where I jumped ahead, or I can like jump back to here that hasn't loaded, and it'll just jump to that point and start loading. So the JavaScript API, along with just the player controls, give you access to that. So you could actually have a player that loads, start playing it from the middle of the video if you wanted to, and let it play as like a segment and then stop it or whatever. So you can do lots of really fine granular control there. And then you can see down here, I have some numbers being put out here. So one of them is the duration, where I grab the duration from the player. The other one is the current time of the video, so you can key events according to how the video is playing and what the current time of the video is. You can also get how many bytes have loaded, how many bytes are total, and then the start bytes, which is, in the case where you start it from the middle, you can know what the start bytes are. So if you wanted to, you could recreate this seek bar here using that data. And so you could have your own custom seek bar or whatever if you wanted to. And that really comes into play when you're using the Chromeless player for the most part. There's also ways to get and set the volume and mute it. And I think that's it. We'll go through that stuff in a little bit. So this is our JavaScript API reference. All the functions are listed out here. You have play, stop, pause. I'm not going to go through all of them because they're probably pretty self-apparent, I think. Seek to. One thing to note when you're seeking with videos is that the FLV format has a limitation to where you can seek to, and that you can only seek to a keyframe within the video. And if you're familiar with the video, you know that there's not a keyframe every second, or every frame even. The keyframes are usually spread out. And in my experience, keyframes on YouTube are usually between 2 seconds all the way up. I've seen them as far apart as 15 seconds, unfortunately. So we have been working a little bit on getting that closer together and trying to set up a standard way of saying any video should only have keyframes at a maximum as far apart as 2 seconds, which makes seeking a little bit better. But in some cases with older videos that haven't, that were encoded a long time ago, you might see a little bit worse performance in that case. So that's something to worry about. If you call seek to and say you want to go to seconds, like 15 seconds into the video, and the first keyframe before that happens to be at like 7 seconds, the player will always jump to the keyframe before the time that you requested. So the user will always see the content that you intended them to see, but they might see a little bit ahead of that time as well. And you guys could do some trickery where you seek to 15, and if it doesn't go to 15, you could like hide the player and mute it or something until it gets to 15 and then show it. So I mean, you guys could sort of hack together a real sort of accurate seek time thing. The allow seek ahead parameter is just the way to allow you to either allow the player to jump ahead and make a new request to the server, or only seek within the part that's already downloaded. So you can actually genuinely build like a seek bar that works the same way that ours does. Everything else here is pretty standard. The add event listener is the way that you listen to state changes in the player. So you can, when the player loads, you can set up a listener for this on state change event. So anytime the player state changes, like if a user plays it or pauses it or the video ends, you can listen for that state and then act upon it. So you can know when the video ends or if the user paused it. You could also compare the current time to the duration of the video as well and find it out that way. But the events are probably a little cleaner. And then there's an error event, which this only has one error listed, but there's actually 2 different errors you can get. One would be if the video has been taken down or if it's now private or something like that. And the other one is if the video has embedding disabled, which I believe is a 101 error, but I haven't updated the documentation yet. The way that this works is when you load the player in the page, you have to add a player parameter in order to enable the JavaScript API called enable.js API. You set it to 1. And what this does is it tells the player that you want the JavaScript API to be turned on. And so by default, it's turned off, so we don't call random JavaScript functions on everybody's pages. Once you call that, when the player loads on the page, it's going to call this function called on YouTube Player Ready, which is mentioned right here. So what you do is you specify this function called on YouTube Player Ready in JavaScript on your page. Once the player loads, it calls on YouTube Player Ready, and that's how you know the player is ready. There is a certain case where if you have more than one player on your page, you might not know which one is ready. So there's another variable called player API ID, which is right here, and you basically just set that to any string that you want. It should be like a unique string, obviously. And what happens is when the player then calls on YouTube Player Ready, it'll pass that string back to that function, so you know which of your players is ready and which ones are still initializing. Yeah?
Do you know if there's an option to stay within full screen and jump from video to video? Like
so the
videos with better manipulation?
Yeah, so the question is there a way to stay in full screen and jump from video to video? And in the normal embedded player, no, there's not. There's no way to load a new video at this point. It is something that I want to add, but I don't know how long it'll be until that's added. With the Chromeless player, you could do that. So in the Chromeless player, it doesn't have native full screen functionality that we do, but if you load the Chromeless player into your own Swift and make that go full screen, then you could load a new video into the Chromeless player and it would stay in full screen and you could load the new video. So you guys could do like a full immersive full screen mode where they never have to leave and load whatever videos you want. Let's see, so that's pretty much it. There's a lot of other example code on this page to get you started, and the demo that I showed is down here at the bottom where the sample stuff is at. So let me show you a couple other demos using the embedded player. So here's something that I put together after I made the API. This was sort of inspired by a mashup I saw a while back on the internet called, it was using a video called Rendezvous, and it was a guy, it's an old classic video apparently of a guy who races through Paris going really, really fast in a car, and somebody had taken a Google Maps thing and had planned out his route and synchronized it with the video, only it was like fake synchronization where you had to like start the video and then start the map at the same time and hope that they were synced up. So I did this video as sort of kind of a parody of that, but then also sort of a showcase of what you can do with the Embedded Player API. So what this does is it takes this race that goes down a really twisty street here in San Francisco, and it sort of synchronizes the guys travel down the street on this Google Map thing. So unlike the other mashup that I had seen, this one actually synchronizes it with the player. Since we're using the player API, we always know where the player position is when you're playing stuff back. So if I back up here, you'll see the map will stay synchronized with it and back up with it. So I can actually drag this and like jump ahead, and the map will always stay synchronized exactly with where the guy is in the video. So this isn't real GPS data. I wish it were. That would make it really cool. I actually set up, there's sort of like a debug mode on the maps code that I borrowed from the other guy, where you can just kind of click on the map in an area and it'll follow where you're clicking, so you can plan out the area you want it to go to. And then I just sort of manually tweaked it a little bit. And if you view the source of this page, all the sources there, you guys can look at it. The URL's right here if you can see that. I don't know. It's linked on my presentation, so if you grab my presentation, you can see it. Okay, let's go back to this here. All right, so here's another thing. This was actually started as, I think, a 20% project of a Google engineer down in Mountain View. They wanted to have a debate tool, I guess you could call it, where they wanted to watch these presidential debates and then add a sort of transcript and then also have a sort of interactive feature to it where, if a politician said something in their debate, you could look it up and then, add the transcript later saying, this isn't necessarily accurate, there might be some other stuff here, or, this is accurate, and in addition, here's some more information. So there's a few different videos here, and you can actually pick one, and you have this transcript for the video that goes along next to it.
Move to the next question.
And you can jump around by either clicking here, and you can jump around the video, or if you just watch the video, this transcript will stay synchronized the whole time while you're watching it. It's a pretty nice use of it, I think.
For a lot of places, and especially Mexico. Southern Mexico, it was a disaster. It destroyed the entire agricultural economy. Guess what happened? They all came north. If NAFTA had worked so well as...
Let's see, and then this is sort of the same idea. This was Michael Geary actually came up to us at Google I/O a few weeks back and saw the demos, and I think he went home that night and coded this into a jQuery plugin the next day and showed up at our booth and said, hey, look what I made, it's pretty cool. So this was really neat. This is sort of like a presentation tool where he took a video. I believe he gave a talk at Google a while back about YouTube map mashups, where he did some election maps using YouTube Maps. And the Maps API.
All right, so this is Mike Geary. So I originally got...
so he made this little tool, and this is actually a jQuery plugin that you can take and add a bunch of pointers to your video. And this is, you can see it's like an hour-long video of the presentation. And as it goes through, this will follow along. You can see it just change there on its own. And then in this big area here, it actually loads any URL that you give it, or it could load, it could load a slide of your presentation if you wanted it to. Or in his case, he actually loads different HTML pages and the actual maps demos that he's talking about in the app. So like if you look at Iowa Maps API map,
it's actually amazing it works as well as it does.
you can see this actually loads
There's another version of this with just a straight map.
the thing that he's talking about in the thing here. And this is actually a live Google Maps thing, so you can move it around and play with it and zoom in and actually play with it while the talk is going on, while you're listening to the talk. So I thought this was a really nice use of the Player API. And it always stays synchronized as the video plays. And the source code is all there. I think it's AnnoTube, I guess he called it. And like I said, it's a jQuery plugin, so if you're using jQuery already, it's really easy to get started in using it. You just basically set your stuff up and go. All right. So, the Flash API, does anybody use Flash? Does anybody care about Flash? Should I go over the Flash stuff? All right, there's a good number of people, so I'll talk about it a little bit. There's not really a lot to talk about. Everything that's in the JavaScript API that I mentioned is also available in the Flash API, so it's pretty much the same thing. The one caveat is that our players are written in ActionScript 2. I'm sorry. But we do that so we reach more people, so I know all you guys are probably using crazy ActionScript 3. You can still embed the player in ActionScript 3, but it takes a little bit of extra work. So you're probably familiar, if you're a Flash developer, that AS2 cannot talk directly to an AS3 SWIF. So you have to write some sort of wrapper that uses either external interface or local connection to talk between the SWIFs. I've seen a few people do it. I think this presentation, or one of these demos I'm going to show, does it. So it is possible, and there's a lot of talk about it on our GData API forum if you guys are interested in checking it out and you want to get on there. The only difference really with the Flash API is how you load the player. So you actually load it into a movie clip, and then you can call this isPlayerLoaded call. You basically have to set up some sort of loop or something that checks until it's loaded. And then when it's loaded, it'll let you know, and you can start calling all the API calls. Okay. So, the Chromeless player. The Chromeless player, I can actually claim that I designed the Chromeless player. The visual design, that is, and that's because it doesn't have a visual design. All it has is a logo. So, to show you an example of the Chromeless player, I suppose. Here it is. Ta-da! Hold the applause, please. No applause. All right. So the idea behind the Chromeless player was that we wanted to give people as much control over our player as we could, within reason, obviously. So we still want to add all of our cool features, like annotations and things, and excuse me, and all the fun stuff. And also hopefully make it easier for you guys to develop with our things, with our videos, I should say. So the Chromeless player has all the same controls, JavaScript controls, Flash controls, as the embedded player does, only it doesn't have all the extra stuff like the related videos and the color settings and the control bar and things. All right. So that's pretty much it. I want to show you guys some demos. Because I already have this one up. This one was a pretty recent thing. This was done by a little agency in, I don't know, I think Philadelphia or something. And this is for JCPenney, and they did like a little karaoke machine. And you can actually start singing. And what it does is they basically capture their own video in their and it's a Flash app, obviously, it's like a full page thing. I think it's actually AS3. And let's do Ballroom Blitz, I guess. And it records you. I guess it'll record me. I don't know. I'll have to scoot down here. Oh no. Well, it didn't find my webcam properly. Whoops. We don't want to watch that one again. Yeah. I'm going to bring a balloon to this thing next time. Let me open that up again. All right, I'll just show you guys one that somebody has made. So what they do is they basically record the camera in their app. They send it up to, they can sort of transpose and sort of, I don't know, I guess transpose isn't the word. They can sort of mash up all these sort of different effects and things that they've done that are similar to like what you can do in iChat if you have the most recent version of iChat. And then they send it to YouTube. And then they play it back using the Chromeless player. So this is the Chromeless player loaded into their app, and then they have their own custom UI. It's real simple. Just play a pause, and then you can listen to all these people singing. So it's like a karaoke app. Yeah, not everybody really gets into it as much. We could find a good one, I guess. Let's find somebody good. This guy looks like a pro. Yeah.
I'm all out of love, I'm so lost without you. I knew you were right, believing for so long. I'm so lost without you. I don't. Rachel, come back. You just blew out of my face.
Yeah, so So the way that this works, I believe, is they capture frames of the video and then add their effects on the client side using Flash. And all these effects that you see, like the stars flying around things, I think are actually done in Flash using, just random things, and you can do like different stuff, and you can actually manipulate bitmap stuff really well in Flash. So, and then they take that and they compile the video on their server and then suit it up to YouTube using the API, and then load it back through the API into their app there and display it all. So it's a really nice use. I have a few other demos of the Chromeless player that I want to show you guys too. If you're not up to writing your own player that uses it, there's a really popular player called JWFLV Player that some of you may have heard of. It's pretty popular, and if you don't recognize these controls, you probably will see it around the internet at some point. It's a really popular, just sort of really generic FLV player that plays pretty much anything, and it's really, really customizable. So when I did the Chromeless player, I told this guy about it. And he was interested to get the Chromeless player into his player. So you can actually use this player now to play YouTube videos because it uses the Chromeless player. So he chose also a really awesome video to demo this.
Jump in my car, I wanna take you home. Come on and jump in my car. It's too far to walk on your own.
And you can see here it's really customizable. I mean, you can go through here and customize pretty much anything. You can do auto start. He actually has a full screen option here too. No. What, you don't like this? You don't like the Hoff? And I'm not really sure why, but the YouTube logo gets really big on this one when it goes full screen, but you can actually call set size on the player and set it to the size, and the logo should stay the small size. So he must be doing something funky with that, but you should be able to get that fixed there. So that's sort of an example of the Chromeless player. So going full screen, so like you could see this, and if you were to customize this player to allow, to load new videos, then you could have a full screen player that just always stays full screen and just always loads new videos as they sit there. Yeah. It's a good video. You guys should watch that at some point.
It's possible to detect the exit of the full screen?
So is it possible to detect the exit of the full screen? Yes, if you're using Flash, you can. Whatever the container movie clip is, there's an on full screen event that gets fired, and it tells you if it's going into full screen or exiting full screen.
What about from the context of JavaScript?
No. Our player doesn't have that built in either.
You have to roll your Swift player, put the content in there.
Right. I mean, it could be as simple as making a Swift that proxies the JavaScript calls to the JavaScript into our player, and that also has the on full screen event handler, and that's it. So it would be a pretty simple Swift if that's all you wanted.
Would the events that are defined by your player be propagated out? Even though
You'd have to do it yourself.
So you pretty much have to recreate every call, or
Yeah, but that API is not that big, so it wouldn't be that difficult. There's another question back there.
Yeah, what's the advantage of using the Chromeless player, rolling your own inside a video display or opening that connection?
Well, the difference is that we don't allow people to access our FLVs directly. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to do it, and it's not supported by us, and we really discourage it. The reason being is that we give a lot of users options when they upload their videos, like they only want this to be available in this country, or maybe they only want their friends to be able to see it. And if you go to the FLVs directly, you bypass all of that. So our players are like the gateway. So our players are sort of playing the cop to our FLV things to enforce people's options. So you could in fact piss off your users if they went to your site and you started playing their private videos, and they'd be like, "What's wrong with you guys?" So it's better to use the Chromeless player or the embedded player. And then we won't send you nasty illegal letters either. Small footnote there. Any other questions before we keep going? All right, I'll leave some time at the end for questions. Actually, how much longer do I have? 15 minutes? I think so. All right. A few more examples. This is a company called Slide. They do a lot of Facebook apps and things. They have a way that you can customize the Chromeless player and then put it on your site, I think. So they have like a bunch of skins you can choose. I like this one because it's got lots of bling. Then you can like pick a video you want. And it basically looks like this, so you can have like custom player and it plays in their player. Whoops, this actually makes you save it before you can play it. No, skip. So here's my video, and then I can hit play and play it. So that's about it for that one. Let's see. Here's another example of someone who made a custom UI using all Flash. So this is actually a Swift that loads the Chromeless player, again, sort of like the JWFLV player, and they have their own thing. So what they have is they have it set up so you can actually pick a YouTube user channel or user favorites or a playlist or whatever, and then put in either the username or maybe like a keyword, I think, or something like that. And then it'll actually make you a player that you can embed on your site, and then that player will play like all your favorite videos or a specific user's videos if you want. So it's kind of cool. So these are like playing videos from Big Cat Rescue. One time I was showing this at a talk, and there was a video of a tiger carrying around a severed cow head, and it was really gross. I just thought I would share that with you guys.
Like any youngster, Hope just had to show off.
That didn't look like a big cat, that looked like a house cat. All right. Anyway, one more quick thing. This one was done by a guy I used to work with that I thought was kind of neat. There's a whole sort of... Whoops, why is that there? So there's this whole sort of subculture on YouTube, I guess, that videotape records and 45s and things. They just put a camera and point it at their 45 and play it. So they have like all this really cool old like reggae and ska music and stuff. And apparently cats meowing. I guess it's on the record. So we set this up so it's sort of like a little like a jukebox thing where it'll play one thing, and then when this was done it'll start playing the other one automatically and then load a new video. And there's a few different users where like all their videos are just this stuff, so you can just pick the username and then play it. I thought this was kind of neat. And then it uses the volume. And if you don't like a song, you can just start playing this one, and then when this one starts playing, the other one stops. And I don't know. It's kind of neat. Really simple, but interesting, I thought. All right, so that's it. So I was going to do a demo here really quick of the JavaScript stuff, but I think I went over it all. So why don't we just jump right to questions? And then if you guys have questions about the JavaScript stuff, I can answer them and sort of do the demo that way. Question over here? Yeah.
Sorry, not a JavaScript question.
Oh, no problem.
But I've seen some examples of people putting their own logos on the videos, which I imagine is somewhat of a sensitive topic. What's the formal policy on that?
So disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but if you're using the Chromeless player, it's going to have our logo on it, or the embedded player is going to have our logo on it. So usually if you see somebody that's using that with their own logo, they're probably not using one of our players. So it's like totally unsupported by our terms of service. And it's a violation of our terms of service, I believe, unless they have some special arrangement. But to my knowledge, I don't think we even do special arrangements like that. So it's probably way bad. Don't do it. Any other questions? In the very far back there, yeah. So the question is, what kind of control do you have over the bitrate the videos are encoded at? And the answer is absolutely none. YouTube encodes them at our own bitrates or whatever we want when the user uploads it. If you look at the YouTube site lately, you'll notice that we do have on some videos a toggle high quality mode. So you can actually watch them at a higher quality. So I think the default size is somewhere around 320 by 240 for like the small classic sort of YouTube sizes, and then we have bigger sizes from there, and then you'll see different sort of bigger quality stuff on like iPhones and Apple TVs and things, but we I believe don't give access to those in the API stuff. So at some point down the road we will be adding high quality to the embedded players, but it's a matter of seeing the feature mature and stabilize on the site first before that happens. The thing is that like when we add new features on the site, we have to let them sort of settle in, because if we add them to the embedded player and add them to the API, then you guys get really mad if we ever change them, right? So we want them to be solid before we push them out to you guys and you guys start using them. Any other questions? Yeah, our green shirt I think has hand up first.
So what's the policy on displaying in-video advertisements in embedded players?
So the question is, what's the policy on embedded and putting in-video advertising on the players? And I believe it's totally forbidden. You mean our policy, or can you do it?
No, your policy.
Our policy. I think we may at some point. So I suppose we reserve the right. I think it's in the terms. Nikhil could probably answer that question if you guys want to ask him specific stuff. And his talk's actually next, and he'll be able to sort of explain the terms of service and give you some better. Maybe? No? Nikhil's not a lawyer, but he could. But he knows it really well. So feel free to ask him, unless there's somebody better. Is there anybody better that's here? No. Nikhil's your man. Nikhil's your man. Go ask him. Next question. I don't know. Which one was you first? All right, go ahead.
In a lot of your examples, you showed exactly what I was looking for, which was the time-based events via an event listener. If the keyframe is not there, is it still accurate? Such that I don't care if there's a keyframe or not, but I do care that if when I'm listening to it, I get told the right time.
It does. So if you seek to 15 and it goes to 10, it'll tell you that it's at 10.
But if I'm listening to see where it's at, will I be told it's at 10 even though there's no keyframe?
You will, well, you're basically told exactly where it's at. So like whatever you're seeing on the video and whatever time that is, that's what time the API says. So if you tell it to go to 15 and there's no keyframe at 15, but there is a keyframe at 12, the player goes to 12 and the API tells you that it went to 12.
And thus going forward, I'll know it's at 13, 14.
Right. And then it goes up from there as it goes. Yeah.
So I'm having problems resizing the YouTube player in Flash.
Okay.
And I'm not sure exactly when you're supposed to do it. When you're checking on if the YT player is loaded.
So I think there was a bug about this that I was tracking. Are you the one that posted that on the forum, actually?
No.
Somebody posted it, and the thing is that if you set up, there was a bug in the player where if you set an interval to pull the player too often, it was basically saying it was ready before it was actually ready.
Right.
And I.
Example code was every 250.
Right. I think that in Flash, my example code was using an on-interframe event, and I think I was using like 31 frames per second or so. And that was okay for me, and I never saw the bug, but I was able to reproduce it, and I think I just fixed it yesterday. So you'll probably see it in a push next week, probably. Okay. So it should be fixed next week, and then you should be able to, as soon as the player's ready, you can call set size, and it'll work. Another question over here, maybe?
Question. With the Chromeless player, the whole video frame becomes effectively a button. So if you click there, you launch YouTube to that video's homepage.
Right.
One question, is there a way to disable that or change that?
No, and I think it's part of the terms of service is that you have to have a link back to YouTube, so I think that's why that's there.
All right, so I think the follow-up question will probably be no as well, but in the sharing menus panel, the embed codes and the link, there's no way to control the building of that URL, is there? It's always back to YouTube.
Yeah, it always goes back to YouTube.
Okay.
If you use the Chromeless player, though, it doesn't even have that, so you could, in theory, build your own link. Like, in fact, that Rock Your Look site, they actually, when you get a link to a video, it gives you the link to the Rock Your Look site, to the specific video you were watching, not to YouTube. Another question, anyone?
We're finding disabling the link is bad for us, but if you created a Flash player with a link, it's syndicated from your side and it's your player that's getting syndicated, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
So, no problem.
As long as you're, nice to us, it's cool. There was another question back there, I think, yeah.
Yeah, are there any plans for an ActionScript 3 Chromeless player?
Yes, but it's probably still some time away.
Okay. What's that next version of Flash?
Yeah, ActionScript 3 is like the latest version. It's not compatible with AS2, which is what our players are written in. So you have to have a new version. Any more questions? Do you guys want to watch more balloon videos? There's a question in the back there.
Question on the frame sizes. If we uploading a video that's widescreen, can we on Chromeless show that in its true size?
You can. It's a recent thing where YouTube used to force all videos to be 4:3, and I believe there's been a recent change to where we don't do that anymore. But I don't know if it's every video or only like certain popular videos. I'm not exactly sure. We are moving in that direction though, so very soon, if not already, you will be able to upload like a 16:9 video, and it'll stay at whatever aspect ratio you upload it at. So the players, including the embedded player and the Chromeless player, are set up in a way that you basically set the viewport size, and then the video, no matter what the aspect ratio of the video is, it just tries to fill up as much of the space that you give it as possible. So if like the video is, if you set the Chromeless player to be 16:9 and the video is 4:3, you'll just automatically get black bars on the left and right side. Same thing if it's like, a really tall and skinny video, you'll get black bars on the, other side. I should say bars on the top and bottom, I guess. Or, yeah, you guys know what I mean. Another question.
Videos that were uploaded, let's say 6 months ago in that envelope resolution, would they be re-encoded, you think?
They may be, but I don't know. We have a lot of videos, so it could take a while. But it's something that I would like to do. So it could take a while, but yes. Another one in the back.
Do you deliver all the videos at the same number of bits per second, or do you sense the access speed?
That's a good question, and I don't know. So the question was that do all of the videos get encoded at the same bit rate, or do we sort of sense the quality of the video and then encode it at a lower bit rate? I think that for the high quality stuff, we sort of check and see if the video would actually benefit from being high quality. Like if somebody uploads a crappy source version, we might not waste time making a high quality version of it because it wouldn't really help. But I think like the standard, 320 by 240 size, I'm not actually sure if it's a standard bit rate for all of them. It might be a good question to ask. Actually, I don't know who would know that. Probably some of the engineers. Which one? John. You think John? Yeah, John would know. If you see John Harding out front, the guy that did the talk first, he may know that. Any other questions? Last chance? Okay, I will be around in the lobby probably for the rest of the time. I think we have a break right now for about 19 minutes or something because we're stopping a little bit early. So feel free to wander out, go to the bathroom, get a snack. Thanks for coming.